Emily Carter had always known fear. It crept into the corners of her small, run-down home in rural Kentucky like a shadow, dark and inescapable. Her father, Jack Carter, was a man hardened by years of failure and alcohol, his only solace found at the bottom of a whiskey bottle. His debts ran deeper than the dry cracks in their wooden porch, and with no way to pay them off, he had decided on the unthinkable, selling his own daughter. Emily overheard the conversation one night while curled up in her tiny bedroom, the walls so thin they couldn't even contain the wind, let alone her father's hushed words. "She's young, pretty. You'll get good money for her," Jack had muttered into the phone. Emily's blood turned to ice. She had heard rumors about girls going missing, sold into rings that no one dared speak about. And now she was next. She had always been afraid of her father's temper. But this was different. This wasn't just a drunken rage or an empty threat. This was real. She had one night to escape. Slipping out of bed, Emily packed what little she had. A bottle of water, a granola bar, and her mother's old locket, the only thing left of the woman who had died when Emily was 6. She didn't have a phone. Her father had smashed it months ago in one of his fits. At exactly 2 a.m., she tiptoed across the creaky wooden floors, her heart pounding. The front door was locked, but she had watched her father hide the spare key under an old boot on the porch. With trembling hands, she grabbed it and turned the lock. Then she ran. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to get far, far away. The small town of Willow Creek was surrounded by dense woods, and she disappeared into them like a ghost, the night swallowing her whole. By morning, Jack Carter woke to an empty house. When he realized Emily was gone, a cold panic set in. Not because he cared about her, he didn't, but because the men he owed money to weren't the forgiving type. If he didn't deliver Emily, they would take something else. His life. Sheriff Thomas Grayson had been in law enforcement for 25 years, but he had a bad feeling about this case. When Jack Carter reported his daughter missing later that morning, the man looked more nervous than heartbroken. "She ran away," Jack said, rubbing his unshaven face. "Always been a wild one." Grayson narrowed his eyes. He knew Jack's type. A gambler, a liar, and a drunk. He also knew Emily. A quiet, polite girl who never caused trouble. Something wasn't right. Within hours, search teams combed the woods. Bloodhounds picked up Emily's scent, but it led in circles before vanishing completely, as if she had simply disappeared. Then came the first twist. 2 days after Emily's disappearance, Jack Carter was found unconscious in his home. His wrists bound, his face battered. The house had been ransacked, the floors smeared with blood. Someone had been looking for something. Or someone. The only clue was a message scrawled on the wall in red paint. Or was it blood? "Where is she?" Sheriff Grayson now had 2 mysteries on his hands. Who had attacked Jack Carter? And more importantly, had Emily truly escaped? Or had someone else taken her? Sheriff Thomas Grayson stood in Jack Carter's trashed living room, his eyes scanning the bloody writing on the wall. "Where is she?" The letters dripped down in streaks, adding an eerie presence to the dimly lit room. Jack Carter was barely conscious, his face swollen from the beating. Whoever did this wasn't just trying to hurt him. They were looking for Emily. But why? Grayson leaned in. "Jack, you need to tell me the truth. What the hell did you get mixed up in?" Jack groaned, coughing up blood. "I don't know," he slurred, his words barely audible. I just needed money." The sheriff's stomach turned. He had suspected something foul, but now it was confirmed. Jack Carter had been trying to sell his own daughter. Emily's trail goes cold. Meanwhile, deep in the dense Kentucky woods, Emily Carter was still running. Her legs ached, and her stomach growled, but she didn't dare stop. She didn't know who she was running from, her father, the men he owed money to, or something worse. As the sun set, she stumbled upon an abandoned hunting cabin. It smelled of damp wood and decay, but it was shelter. She curled up in a corner, trying to stay awake, but exhaustion took over. She didn't hear the footsteps outside. A shadow moved near the window. Someone was watching. A new player enters the game. The next morning, Sheriff Grayson got another surprise. A black SUV was parked outside the station, its windows tinted. The man who stepped out was tall, dressed in a sharp black suit, and carrying an air of authority. "Agent Calloway, FBI," the man said, flashing his badge. "I think we need to talk about Emily Carter." Grayson stiffened. "FBI? Why is the Bureau interested in a runaway case?" Calloway's expression was unreadable. "Because Emily isn't just some missing girl. She's part of a larger case we've been tracking for years. A human trafficking ring operating in this very town." The room fell silent. Jack Carter wasn't just selling his daughter off to a random buyer. He had been dealing with dangerous people, people who didn't take kindly to broken deals. The hunt begins. Emily woke to the sound of rustling outside the cabin. Panic set in as she realized she wasn't alone. Pressing herself against the wall, she held her breath. Then came a voice. "Low, male. Emily, I know you're in there." Her blood ran cold. She had two choices, run or fight. Her hands searched frantically in the dark until they found something. A rusty old hunting knife left behind by whoever had once stayed in this cabin. The doorknob turned slowly. Whoever was coming for her had just made a big mistake. The rusty doorknob twisted, the hinges creaking in protest. Emily clutched the knife so tightly her knuckles turned white. The door swung open. A tall figure stepped inside, dressed in dark jeans and a jacket. His face was hidden under the shadow of a hood, but his stance was tense, prepared for something, prepared for her. "Emily," he said again, softer this time, "I'm not here to hurt you." She didn't trust him. Her grip tightened on the knife. "Stay back," she warned, her voice shaking. The man raised his hands in surrender. "My name is Caleb. I was sent to find you." "By who?" "Your mother." Emily's breath caught in her throat. "You're lying," she whispered. "My mom is dead." Caleb hesitated. "That's what your father wanted you to believe." Back in Willow Creek, Sheriff Grayson was piecing together the puzzle. The FBI agent, Calloway, had provided him with classified information. Emily's mother, Laura Carter, had faked her death 8 years ago. She was trying to escape, Calloway explained. Jack Carter was involved in something much bigger than just debts. Laura had been working as an informant for the FBI, gathering evidence against a high-level human trafficking network. When she tried to get out, they put a hit on her. Grayson's head spun. "So she faked her death to protect Emily?" Calloway nodded. "She's been in hiding ever since. But now, Emily is in danger, and Laura is risking everything to get her back." Meanwhile, back at the cabin, Emily wasn't convinced. "If my mother was alive, she would have come for me." Caleb sighed. "She's been trying, but your father made sure she could never find you. When you ran, it gave her a chance." Emily's mind raced. Could this be true? Could her mother really be alive? Before she could ask another question, the sound of snapping branches outside made them both freeze. Someone else was there. Caleb's expression darkened. "They found us." A gunshot shattered the silence. "Run!" Caleb shouted, grabbing Emily's wrist and pulling her toward the back door. Bullets ripped through the old wooden walls as they bolted into the woods. Emily's heart pounded as she realized something terrifying. Whoever was shooting at them didn't want to take her. They wanted her dead. Back in town, Jack Carter had regained consciousness. His face was swollen, and his ribs ached, but he didn't care. He was desperate. He dialed a number with trembling fingers. When the line connected, a voice on the other end sent a chill through his spine. "You failed, Jack," the voice said coldly. Jack swallowed hard. "I can fix this. I know where she is. I just need more time." A pause. Then, "Time's up." The line went dead. Jack's breath quickened. He knew what that meant. They were coming for him next. Emily and Caleb ran through the dense forest, the sound of gunfire echoing behind them. The men chasing them weren't trying to capture her. They were trying to eliminate her. Emily's lungs burned, but she forced herself to keep going. Caleb pulled her forward, leading her through the trees with the precision of someone who had done this before. "Who are they?" she gasped. Caleb didn't slow down. "Your father's debt wasn't just about money," He owed these people a deal. When he didn't deliver you, they decided you were a liability. A bullet whizzed past, splintering a tree trunk inches away. They don't just want me, Emily realized. They want to erase me. Caleb nodded grimly. And they won't stop until you're gone. Ahead, a river rushed through the forest. Caleb made a snap decision. Jump! Emily hesitated. The river was violent, crashing against jagged rocks below. Emily, jump! With a deep breath, she leaped. Back in town, Jack Carter knew he was a dead man walking. He had betrayed dangerous people, and now they were tying up loose ends. He stuffed a duffel bag with cash, a pistol, and a burner phone. He needed to get out. But before he could reach the door, there was a knock. Soft, deliberate. Jack froze. He pulled out his gun and edged toward the peephole. No one was there. Then the lights cut out. His breath hitched. They were already inside. He spun around, gun raised, but he was too slow. A figure emerged from the darkness, and the last thing Jack saw was the gleam of a knife before it sliced across his throat. Emily hit the freezing water like a stone. The current pulled her under, dragging her downstream. She kicked and thrashed, fighting for air. Then strong hands grabbed her. Caleb. He pulled her above the surface, gasping. Stay with me. The river carried them far, past the gunman, past the forest. By the time they washed up on shore, Emily was too exhausted to move. Caleb checked her for injuries. We need to keep going. Emily coughed up water. Where? To your mother. Sheriff Grayson stood over Jack Carter's lifeless body, his face grim. The message on the wall had changed. This time, written in Jack's own blood, were 3 chilling words. She knows too much. Grayson clenched his fists. The people after Emily weren't just criminals. They were part of something bigger, something deeper. Emily Carter wasn't just a missing girl. She was the key to a secret that people would kill to protect. And now they were coming for her. Caleb and Emily trudged through the damp forest, their bodies weak from exhaustion. The river had bought them time, but they weren't safe yet. How do I know I can trust you? Emily asked, still unsure about Caleb. He sighed. Because your mother sent me. How do I know she's really alive? Caleb stopped walking and pulled something from his pocket. A worn-out silver locket. Emily's breath caught. She knew that locket. It was the matching half to the one she had around her neck. Her mother really was alive. Hours later, they arrived at an old farmhouse tucked deep in the woods. The place looked abandoned, but Caleb knocked in a specific pattern. A moment later, the door creaked open, and there she was, Emily's mother, Laura Carter. Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she took in the sight of the woman she had believed dead for most of her life. Laura pulled her into a tight embrace, whispering, I never stopped looking for you. Emily wanted to believe her, but there wasn't time for emotions. The people after me, Emily said, pulling away. They killed Dad. Laura's expression darkened. Then they won't stop. She turned to Caleb. How much time do we have? Not enough, Caleb admitted. They'll find us soon. Laura led them inside and pulled out a folder filled with documents. Jack wasn't just in debt, she explained. He was involved in a human trafficking operation. The same one I was working to expose when I died. Emily's stomach churned. You were an informant. Laura nodded. Jack knew I had evidence that could take them down. That's why he kept you hidden all these years. You weren't just his daughter, you were his leverage. Emily felt sick. Her whole life had been a lie. Caleb cut in. If we can get this evidence to the FBI, we can end this. Laura hesitated. There's just one problem. The people we're dealing with, they have agents inside the bureau. We don't know who to trust. Before they could decide their next move, headlights appeared in the distance. They found us, Caleb muttered. Laura pulled out a handgun and shoved a second one into Caleb's hands. Get Emily out of here. I'm not leaving you, Emily protested. Listen to me, Laura said, gripping her daughter's face. I will find you. But if they get you now, everything I've done will be for nothing. Tears filled Emily's eyes, but she nodded. Caleb grabbed her wrist. We have to go. Now. Laura turned toward the door, gun raised. As Emily and Caleb slipped out the back, the sound of gunfire erupted behind them. Emily didn't look back. The news broke in waves. A major human trafficking ring dismantled. Dozens of arrests. Corrupt officials exposed. But there was one name missing from the reports. Laura Carter. Emily sat in a small apartment in Washington, D.C., watching the news. She had been placed under witness protection. Caleb had disappeared, likely on another mission. Her mother had never been found. A part of her refused to believe she was gone. As she stared out the window, a single envelope slid under her door. Heart-pounding, Emily picked it up. Inside was a note. "Keep running. I love you. Mom." Tears streamed down Emily's face. She wasn't safe. Not yet. But she would survive. And she would never stop looking.